whiter, doughier part of the country in Vermont, and suddenly I come to LA, and it was, it was as if this, pinata had erupted, and there was color and glitter and sweets and all this kind of mesmerizing stuff, and I was sort of intoxicated by what I was seeing in LA. Just the stew of ethnicities and languages and skin tones and backgrounds and every other kind of life experience. But it was also really intimidating and terrifying at times, and I felt I felt that there was nothing in my life experience that had prepared me for that. Perhaps there was, but at that moment, I felt kind of like I had something to prove, and that sense of kind of discovery and wonderment, and needing to build bridges with people and places that seem unlike you, was implanted, from those very first days in 1985, and have sort of, informed the way I've lived my personal life and professional life in LA ever since.
Have you ever had any enthusiasm for exploring your own heritage?
Not especially. I think I have a keener appreciation for it now, and I think my perceptions of it have evolved to the point where, I think going to Israel, visiting Israel would be tremendous, but I can't quite explain why it has never intrigued me the way, it quote unquote should. There was always something about kind of, either it was a thrill or a validation or something, a challenge about insinuating myself into a place where I didn't belong, and being accepted by that. And, somewhere in my 20s, Latino culture became just this much more tangible and engaging and kind of mesmerizing object for me than anything I'd ever experienced before. And so, I don't know, that whatever need we have to identify with something and sort of drink deeply of that got projected onto the Latin American world. And No, go ahead.
What's your primary identity? Is it that of a writer, as an American, a living being, a father, a Jew, I don't know, a Los Angelino? What's your primary identity?
Wow, I'm not sure that I have an answer to that. I suppose I suppose writer would have been at near the top of that list. It is what I have done my entire adult life. It's what sort of has made me think of myself in terms of what I am. But the rug got pulled out from under that really dramatically. I spent 25 years at the LA Times and LA Magazine combined, and maybe that was sort of unrealistic to always assume you had a job, that you always had a livelihood. But I got a paycheck every 2 weeks for all those years. That was that was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of weeks of paychecks without really having to question if it was going to vanish. And then, pretty abruptly and brutally, it all came to an end. So being a writer is now, I'm really conflicted about it. I mean, I think of myself as a writer still, and yet I'm not quite I'm not working on a story at this given moment. I'm not writing anything, and also my opportunities to write have been are connected now to like the marketplace. I look at my book. My book, it was this labor of love. It was this incredibly personal, intimate expression of what I've lived, and yet then it became a commercial item. It's a commodity, and I've never, again, maybe that's a more honest, a more realistic way of looking at what we do. And I was insulated from that because I was always on staff somewhere, and maybe that also circumscribed me a little bit because I was owned by a large corporation, but I never really felt that at the time. I felt that it gave me kind of remarkable independence because I didn't have to worry about whether my stories were going to sell newspapers or what our sell-through rate would be on the newsstand of LA Magazine. You're insulated from that, and now if I want to write something, if I want to write another book, I have to be very conscious of how viable it is as a commercial product, and that kind of sucks.
During your career as a journalist, were there any important intimations that the newspaper was dying and that you were going to get laid off? Not at
the LA Times for me. I mean, look, I was there during, maybe not the graviest of gravy days, but pretty close. I mean, there was money to do whatever needed to be done. And, in the early 90s, we were the largest metropolitan daily newspaper in America. And that was announced with great fanfare. I left in 2000, and, things were not great at that moment, although that really doesn't have anything to do with why I left, but it was right in the wake of the whole Staples Center fiasco, where the Sunday magazine had been sort of pimped out to Staples Center. And if you look at that now, I mean, it almost seems kind of like a quaint problem to have.
If only that was the problem at the LA Times today.
And then LA Magazine seemed like the riskier place to go, right? The daily newspaper, this was stable, it's going to be around forever. A magazine seemed much more vulnerable to the ebb and flow of the economy, and certainly if my editor, Kit Rackless, left for any reason or was let go for any reason, I assumed that my job was over at that point, that I was pretty much there at his bidding. And what happened over the 9 years I was there is it went on this sort of wild, crazy, money-making, award-winning jag. I mean, it was this kind of golden age of LA Magazine where we were writing, 8, 10, 12,000 word stories and taking 3, 4, 5, 6 months to do them. And maybe that will be mocked by some people who feel that that's kind of bloated and indulgent, but I look at it as a time of just tremendous creative freedom and richness. and it just ended so abruptly.